I'm Amanda, 32, standing alone at my husband Nathan's funeral, surrounded by his co-workers but not a single face from my side. The funeral home's emptiness screams louder than any mourner could. I keep scanning the entrance, hoping to see my parents, my sister Heather, or Stephanie, my best friend since childhood. But they never come. My phone buzzes with pathetic excuses: car troubles, sudden illness, work emergencies. The truth? They never accepted Nathan. Never thought he was good enough for a foster. Little did they know, their absence today wouldn't be the end of our story, but the beginning of their reckoning. Before I continue my story, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed by those who should have loved you most. Trust me, you'll want to see how I turned my grief into justice. I grew up in the prestigious foster family, where appearances meant everything. Our sprawling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut housed my father Lawrence, a banking executive, my mother Victoria, who chaired various charity boards, and my older sister Heather. From the outside, we were the perfect American family, wealthy, respected, and polished. But inside those walls, perfection wasn't an aspiration, it was a requirement. My childhood consisted of piano lessons, etiquette classes, and constant reminders of the foster family reputation. My father would often say, "Fosters don't just succeed, they excel." This pressure created a strange dynamic between Heather and me. We were close in the way that soldiers in the same trench are close, united against the common enemy of disappointment, yet competing for the limited resource of parental approval. Heather was always better at playing the game. She dated the sons of my father's business associates, graduated top of her class at Dartmouth, and eventually married Bradley Hampton, whose family owned half the real estate in Boston. I, on the other hand, was always a bit of a disappointment, too outspoken, too interested in common things, too willing to question the values I'd been raised with. My one constant was Stephanie Miller. We met in 9th grade when her family moved to our neighborhood after her father received a significant promotion. She wasn't from old money like us, but new money was acceptable enough for my parents to allow the friendship. Stephanie quickly learned to navigate the complicated social waters of our world, adapting in ways I never could. We shared everything: secrets, dreams, clothes, and the mutual understanding of what it meant to live in our privileged bubble. Then I met Nathan Carter during my senior year of college. I had car trouble on a back road, and he was the mechanic who came to my rescue. He wasn't just handsome, he was genuinely kind in a way I'd rarely experienced. When he refused to accept payment for helping me, insisting it was just the right thing to do, something shifted in my understanding of value. Nathan grew up in a blue-collar family in Rhode Island. His father taught him everything about cars, and by 26, Nathan was already the most trusted mechanic at Anderson's auto shop. He worked with his hands, came home greasy, and had never set foot on a yacht, all things that would horrify my parents. Our connection was immediate and undeniable. We talked for hours that first night, sitting in his tow truck outside my apartment. He didn't try to impress me with status symbols or connections. Instead, he listened, really listened, and asked questions about who I was, not what my family name meant. When I finally brought Nathan to meet my family 3 months later, their response was exactly as I'd feared. My mother's smile never reached her eyes as she shook his hand. My father asked pointed questions about his career aspirations, clearly indicating that being a mechanic wasn't considered a career in the foster household. Heather barely acknowledged him, texting throughout dinner. Only after Nathan excused himself to use the restroom did my mother lean in and whisper, "Darling, he seems nice enough for a fling, but surely you can't be serious about someone so limited." Nathan, however, was determined. He arrived at every family event with thoughtful gifts and genuine attempts to connect. He asked my father about his golf game, discussed fashion with my mother, and even tried to engage Heather about her marketing job. His efforts were met with polite dismissal at best, thinly veiled contempt at worst. "They'll come around," Nathan would assure me after particularly painful encounters. "People just need time to adjust their expectations." But as months turned into a year, my family's resistance only hardened. The breaking point came when Nathan proposed on our first anniversary. The vintage ring had belonged to his grandmother, a simple band with a modest diamond. I thought it was perfect. When I called to share the news, my father's response was immediate: "This is a mistake you'll regret. Don't expect us to fund this nonsense." My mother added, "Amanda, think about what you're throwing away. The Carter name won't open any doors for your children." When I told Stephanie, her response was more subtle but equally disappointing. "Are you sure this is what you want? You always talked about marrying someone who could give you the life you're used to." Despite their reactions, Nathan and I began planning our wedding. We decided on a small ceremony we could afford ourselves, hoping that by the time the date arrived, my family would have accepted our relationship. Looking back, I realize how naive we were. Our wedding day dawned bright and clear, a perfect October Saturday that seemed to promise new beginnings. I spent the morning getting ready in a small hotel suite rather than my childhood home, as my mother had made it clear that she couldn't support the preparations for such a hasty decision. Still, I remained hopeful that they would show up for the actual ceremony. Nathan and I had chosen a charming converted barn venue that fit our budget. His aunt had helped with flower arrangements, and his cousin, a talented baker, made our wedding cake. Everything was simpler than the elaborate Foster affairs I'd grown up attending, but it felt more authentic, more us. As I waited in the small bridal room, I kept checking my phone. My parents had RSVP'd with a reluctant yes, as had most of my extended family. Stephanie was supposed to be my maid of honor, and she'd attended the rehearsal dinner the night before, though she'd left early claiming a headache. An hour before the ceremony, the texts started coming in. My uncle's family had a sudden flu. My cousin's car broke down on the highway. My mother's migraine had returned with a vengeance. My father was needed for an emergency conference call with Tokyo. I sat in shocked silence as my side of the guest list evaporated person by person. When Heather finally arrived, I nearly collapsed with relief at seeing at least one Foster in attendance. She looked uncomfortable in her bridesmaid dress, constantly checking her watch. "They're not coming, are they?" I asked her as we stood alone in the bridal room. Heather avoided my eyes. "Mom's really not feeling well. And Dad's conference call? And Uncle Robert's family's sudden illness? And Aunt Patricia's twisted ankle?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Heather sighed. "Amanda, what did you expect? You're marrying a mechanic." Dad had to make up an excuse to tell the Whitneys why his daughter won't be making a suitable match. The truth I'd been avoiding hit me full force. Dad told people not to come, didn't he? Heather's silence was confirmation enough. The ceremony proceeded with Nathan's side full of supportive family and friends, while my side held only Heather and Stephanie, who kept whispering to each other throughout the vows. During the reception, I overheard Heather tell Stephanie, "I can't believe she's going through with this. Dad's already talking about writing her out of the will." Stephanie nodded sympathetically. "I tried to talk some sense into her last week. She's always been stubborn." Before I could confront them, Heather announced she needed to leave, another family obligation. Stephanie followed shortly after, citing the same headache from the night before. As they left, I noticed my mother's text, "When you're ready to apologize for this embarrassment, we'll be waiting." Through it all, Nathan remained my rock. As we danced alone on the floor during what should have been the father-daughter dance, he whispered, "We don't need them, Amanda. We'll build our own family, one that knows what really matters." That night, after our guests had gone and we were alone in our hotel room, I made a decision. "I don't want to speak to them for a while," I told Nathan. "I can't keep letting them hurt us." Nathan held me close. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But remember, they're still your family." "No," I corrected him, tears streaming down my face. "You're my family now." True to my word, I didn't contact my parents for months after the wedding. Heather occasionally sent generic texts, and Stephanie tried to maintain our friendship as if nothing had happened, but something fundamental had broken between us all. ##Part 4, Building a Life Together. The 5 years Nathan and I shared together were the happiest of my life, despite the shadows my family cast. We started with almost nothing, a small apartment, second-hand furniture, and the weight of my family's disapproval hanging over us. But we had something more valuable, a partnership based on genuine love and respect. Nathan worked tirelessly at Anderson's, often taking extra shifts to build our savings. Within a year, he was promoted to head mechanic, and customers specifically requested him for their repairs. I finished my master's degree in education and secured a position teaching literature at a local high school. We weren't wealthy by Foster standards, but we were comfortable and, more importantly, happy. Our evenings were filled with simple pleasures, cooking dinner together, taking walks around our neighborhood, planning for our future. Nathan would often surprise me with small, thoughtful gifts, wildflowers picked on his way home, a used copy of a book I'd mentioned wanting to read, or breakfast in bed on random Sundays. These gestures meant more to me than all the expensive presents my parents had ever given me. After 3 years of saving, we purchased a small fixer-upper house in a modest neighborhood. The place needed significant work, peeling wallpaper, outdated plumbing, and floors that creaked with every step. But Nathan saw potential where others saw problems. "This will be our sanctuary," he promised as we stood in the empty living room on moving day. "Just give me time." True to his word, Nathan transformed our house piece by piece. He would come home from long shifts at the garage and spend his evenings replacing cabinets, refinishing floors, and painting walls. I learned to hold lighting fixtures in place while he connected wires and to help sand down rough surfaces for new coats of paint. Each improvement was a labor of love, and watching our home take shape under our hands gave me a sense of accomplishment I'd never experienced in my parents' world of hired professionals. During our second year of marriage, I attempted to rebuild bridges with my family. The complete silence had become its own kind of pain, and Nathan encouraged reconciliation, saying, "No one should lose their family if there's any chance to save it." Our first holiday dinner at my parents' house was excruciating. My mother examined our clothes with barely concealed disappointment, while my father interrogated Nathan about his career growth potential. Heather and Bradley made pointed comments about their recent vacation to the Maldives, clearly emphasizing the difference between their lifestyle and ours. When I mentioned our home renovations, my mother said, "Isn't it exhausting to live in a constant construction zone? We had professionals redo the guest wing last month, it only took them a week." We left early, and I cried the whole way home. Nathan held my hand across the car console and said, "They don't understand what we've built. That's their loss." Despite these painful interactions, we continued to attend family events, hoping that time would soften their judgment. It never did. Each visit left me feeling diminished, as if I'd failed some essential test of worth by choosing love over status. Stephanie's gradual withdrawal hurt in a different way. She stopped inviting me to gatherings with our old friends, always with reasonable excuses, "It's just a work thing," or "I thought you'd be busy with house projects." When we did meet for coffee, she would listen to stories about my life with Nathan with a strange detachment, as if I were describing a reality show she found mildly interesting but couldn't relate to. By our 4th anniversary, Nathan and I had started discussing children. We'd been trying for almost a year with no success, and I was beginning to worry. My gynecologist suggested some basic fertility tests for both of us, but before we could complete them, life took an unexpected turn. I woke up one morning violently ill, barely making it to the bathroom in time. Nathan held my hair back, his face concerned. "That's the 3rd time this week, Amanda. I think it's time to see a doctor." But I had already begun to suspect the wonderful truth. That afternoon, I bought a pregnancy test on my way home from work. When those 2 pink lines appeared, I sank to the bathroom floor, overwhelmed with joy. After years of trying, of temperature tracking and disappointment, we were finally going to have our baby. When Nathan came home, I greeted him at the door with the test in hand. He stared at it for a long moment before looking up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "We're having a baby?" he whispered, as if saying it too loudly might make it disappear. I nodded, unable to speak through my own tears. Nathan lifted me off my feet in a gentle hug, spinning me around our living room. "We're having a baby," he shouted, no longer afraid to claim our joy. That night, as we lay in bed discussing names and nursery colors, I made a decision. "I want to tell my family in person," I said. "Maybe this will change things. A grandchild has to mean something to them." Nathan kissed my forehead. "Of course it will. This might be exactly what we need to heal everything." I fell asleep in his arms, dreaming of reconciliation, of my child knowing all their grandparents, of family gatherings without tension or judgment. If only I had known what awaited me the next day. The following afternoon, I drove to my parents' estate with butterflies in my stomach. At nearly 8 weeks pregnant, I wasn't showing yet, but I already felt different, more purposeful, more complete. I hadn't called ahead, wanting to surprise them with the news in person. Despite everything, I believed a grandchild would melt the ice between us. The housekeeper, Maria, greeted me with genuine warmth. "Miss Amanda. So good to see you. Your parents are in the study with Miss Heather and Miss Stephanie." Stephanie was here? That was unexpected, but perhaps fortuitous. I could share my news with everyone I loved at once. I walked quietly down the hallway, planning to surprise them. But as I approached the study, I heard my name and paused just outside the partially open door. "Amanda is making her bed, and now she can lie in it," my father was saying, his voice carrying that familiar tone of finality. The Carter boy was never going to amount to anything. "Did you see their house when you visited last Christmas?" Heather's voice dripped with disdain. "It's like they're playing house in some white trash fantasy." A laugh I recognized as Stephanie's followed. "You should see how she dresses now. All Target and Old Navy. It's like she's forgotten everything." My blood ran cold. My best friend since childhood was sitting with my family, mocking me? "The problem," my father continued, "is that Nathan's becoming too established in the community. People are starting to respect him. Anderson is even talking about making him a partner at that garage." "How do you know that?" Stephanie asked. "I make it my business to know," my father replied. "Just like I made it my business to ensure certain clients took their vehicles elsewhere. But it hasn't been enough of a deterrent." My mind reeled. My father had been actively sabotaging Nathan's career? "And the neighbors I warned about them," Stephanie added. "I told the Johnsons that Nathan had a gambling problem. They've kept their distance." "Good work," my father approved. "Isolation makes people easier to control. That's why I spoke to Wilson at Amanda's school. No committee appointments or advancement for her." I pressed a hand against the wall to steady myself. My family and best friend had been conspiring against us for years, deliberately undermining our lives and relationships. "I still don't understand why we're doing all this," Heather said. "Why not just cut her off completely?" "Because," my father explained patiently, as if to a child, "the foster name still matters. Having Amanda living like that reflects poorly on all of us. I want her to fail, to come crawling back admitting she made a mistake. Then we can quietly divorce her from that grease monkey and restore her to a suitable life." "And if she doesn't come back?" Stephanie asked. There was a pause, and when my father spoke again, his voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Then we may need to take more permanent measures. I have connections who could take care of Nathan for good. Make it look like an accident at that garage of his. Amanda would have no choice but to return to the family then." I must have made a sound, a gasp or a sob, because the conversation suddenly stopped. "Did you hear something?" my mother's voice asked. I didn't wait to hear more. Moving as quietly as possible, I retreated down the hallway and out the front door. Maria called after me, but I ignored her, fumbling with my car keys with shaking hands. Somehow I made it home, though I have no memory of the drive. Nathan found me sitting in our parked car in the driveway, still gripping the steering wheel, tears streaming down my face. "Amanda? What happened? Is it the baby?" He yanked open the car door, his face pale with concern. I couldn't speak at first, could only shake my head. He helped me inside, sat me on our couch, and held my hands until I could find words. "They've been sabotaging us," I finally managed. "All of them, my father, my mother, Heather. Even Stephanie." Nathan's confusion was evident, so I told him everything I'd overheard, the client diversions, the lies to neighbors, the career blocking, and most terrifying of all, my father's threat against his life. Nathan listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each revelation. When I finished, he sat in silence for a long moment. "We need to leave," he finally said. "Tonight. Pack what matters. We'll figure out the rest. But our house, our jobs. None of that matters if your father is serious about hurting me," Nathan said firmly. "And I'm not willing to take that chance, especially not with the baby coming." That night, we packed our essentials, clothes, important documents, irreplaceable mementos. Nathan contacted a friend who owned a garage in Portland, Maine, securing a job starting the following week. I requested emergency leave from my principal, citing a family crisis, which wasn't far from the truth. By morning, we were on the road heading north, leaving behind the home we'd poured our hearts into. The betrayal cut deep, but as I watched Nathan driving, his profile set with determination, one hand protectively on my knee, I knew we were making the right choice. "They won't find us," Nathan promised. "We'll start fresh, just the three of us." I placed my hand over my still flat stomach. "Just the three of us," I echoed, trying to believe that would be enough. Portland welcomed us with ocean breezes and anonymity. We found a small apartment near the harbor and began rebuilding our lives for the third time. Nathan thrived at Mike's Auto, quickly becoming a valued employee. I found work teaching English at a local community center while applying for positions at nearby schools for the fall term. We told no one where we'd come from or why we'd left so suddenly. 3 months into my pregnancy, we started to feel secure again. My small baby bump was visible now, and Nathan would fall asleep each night with his hand resting gently on it, as if to protect our child even in sleep. We began converting the apartment's second bedroom into a nursery, painting the walls a sunny yellow since we'd decided to wait to learn the baby's sex. "I want to be surprised," Nathan had said. "Some things should still be mysterious in this world." We found a doctor we trusted, joined a childbirth class, and started collecting children's books. Slowly, the sharp edges of betrayal began to soften, replaced by anticipation for our growing family. I cut all contact with my family and Stephanie, changing my phone number and email address. Occasionally, I would see notifications that they'd tried to reach me on social media, but I never responded. Nathan suggested changing our last name legally, but I hesitated, not ready to surrender that final piece of my identity. "They don't deserve to have any connection to you or our baby," he argued one night. "I know," I admitted. "But I'm not ready to let them take my name too. They've taken enough." One Tuesday in November, Nathan called to say he'd be working late. "Mike's got a classic Mustang restoration that's giving us fits. I want to get the engine mounts figured out tonight if possible." "Don't stay too late," I reminded him. "We have the ultrasound tomorrow morning." "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," he promised. "I love you, Amanda. Both of you." Those were the last words my husband ever said to me. At 11:42 p.m., a knock at our apartment door jolted me from a light sleep on the couch. 2 police officers stood in the hallway, their expressions grave. "Mrs. Carter?" the female officer asked gently. I nodded, my hand automatically moving to protect my belly. "I'm Officer Ramirez, and this is Officer Peterson. May we come in?" The next few minutes exist in my memory as fragments. Their voices explaining that there had been an incident at the garage. A single gunshot. Nathan found by the night security guard. No signs of forced entry. Nothing stolen. "We believe your husband may have interrupted a burglary," Officer Peterson said, but his tone lacked conviction. "No," I whispered, the horrible truth dawning on me. "It wasn't random. It was my father. Lawrence Foster." The officers exchanged glances. "Ma'am, are you saying you know who might have wanted to harm your husband?" I told them everything then, my words tumbling out between sobs, the threats, our sudden move, my family's wealth and connections. They took notes and promised to investigate, but I could see the skepticism in their eyes. Without proof, my accusations against one of Connecticut's most respected businessmen sounded like the ravings of a grieving widow. After they left, I collapsed on our bedroom floor, the pain physical and overwhelming. I clutched my stomach, whispering to our baby that we would be okay, that I would protect us both. But my body betrayed me as surely as my family had. The cramping started around dawn, and by noon the next day, I had lost our child as well. I woke in the hospital to sterile white walls and the knowledge that I was truly alone. No husband. No baby. No family worth claiming. The doctors spoke of physical recovery, of hormone levels returning to normal, of grief counseling options. Their words washed over me without meaning. When I was released 2 days later, I returned to an apartment haunted by what should have been the half-finished nursery. Nathan's coffee mug still in the sink. His work boots by the door, forever waiting to be filled. I called my parents once, when the grief and rage became too much to contain. "I know what you did," I said when my father answered. There was a pause, then his voice, controlled as always, "Amanda, you're clearly not well. Come home, and we'll get you the help you need. Nathan and our baby are dead because of you," I continued, my voice breaking. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied coldly. "But making wild accusations won't bring back your husband. When you're ready to be rational, your mother and I will welcome you home." I hung up and threw my phone against the wall, watching it shatter like my life had. In that moment of complete despair, something hardened inside me. If justice existed in this world, I would have to create it myself. I contacted Detective James Morgan, the lead investigator on Nathan's case. "I need to know if you're making any progress," I demanded. His hesitation told me everything. "Mrs. Carter, these professional hits are difficult to trace. The person who pulled the trigger was likely hired specifically for this job and is long gone." "And my father? Have you investigated him?" Another pause. "We've looked into Lawrence Foster. His alibi is solid, he was at a charity gala with 50 witnesses the night of the murder. And frankly, we haven't found evidence connecting him to any known hitmen." "Of course you haven't," I said bitterly. "Men like my father don't leave evidence." After hanging up, I sat in our apartment, surrounded by the remnants of the life Nathan and I had built, and made a decision. If the system couldn't deliver justice, I would find my own way. The next morning, I began packing, not to return to my parents as they expected, but to find the evidence that would destroy them. Nathan's funeral was held at a small chapel in Portland. I sat in the front row, numb and disconnected, as the pastor spoke of a life cut tragically short. The pews behind me held Mike from the garage and a handful of coworkers who'd known Nathan for just a few months. A couple of neighbors from our apartment building. The childbirth class instructor who'd heard about the tragedy. Not a single person from my family appeared. Throughout the service, my phone buzzed with messages. From my mother, "Amanda, we're so sorry about Nathan, but your father's back surgery made travel impossible today. We're thinking of you." From Heather, "Car trouble on the highway. Mechanic says it'll be hours. So sorry to miss it." From Stephanie, "Food poisoning hit me hard last night. Can barely leave the bathroom. Call me after?" Each transparent lie twisted the knife deeper. They couldn't even be bothered to coordinate their excuses. I silenced my phone and focused on Nathan's casket, adorned with a simple arrangement of white lilies. He had deserved so much better than this lonely send-off. He had deserved a long life, a chance to hold our child, a family who valued him. After the service, Mike approached me, his weathered face lined with genuine grief. "Nathan was the best mechanic I've ever hired," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "But more than that, he was a good man. The kind they don't make much anymore." His coworkers shared similar sentiments, each memory of Nathan's kindness or skill like a precious gift. These people who'd known him briefly saw what my family had willfully ignored. Nathan's worth had never been about status or money, but about the integrity with which he lived every day. Back at the apartment, I couldn't bear to stay but had nowhere to go. I'd been surviving on autopilot, moving from the funeral arrangements to the service without thinking beyond the next necessary task. Now, faced with the endless empty days ahead, despair threatened to pull me under. Instead, I channeled my grief into action. I pulled out a notebook and began making lists, of my father's business associates, of family connections to criminal elements, which I'd always pretended not to notice, of strange comments over the years that suddenly made more sense. The following day, I requested a meeting with Detective Morgan. He agreed to see me at the station, his expression wary when I arrived. "Mrs. Carter, I understand you're grieving, but..." "I'm not here to make accusations," I interrupted. "I'm here to ask questions about the investigation." Reluctantly, he shared what they'd found, which wasn't much. The security cameras at the garage had been disabled approximately 30 minutes before the estimated time of death. The murder weapon hadn't been recovered. No fingerprints except Nathan's and his coworkers were found at the scene. The most unusual aspect, Morgan admitted, is that nothing was stolen. Not tools, not cash from the register, not even the valuable parts from the classic car your husband was working on. "Because it wasn't a robbery," I said quietly. Morgan leaned forward. "Mrs. Carter, Amanda, I've been a detective for 15 years. This has all the hallmarks of a professional hit. Clean, efficient, no evidence left behind. But those are extremely rare in a town like Portland, and they're expensive. My father is worth millions," I reminded him. "Even if that's true, we need evidence, not just motive. And so far, we don't have it." I left the police station feeling simultaneously defeated and more determined. On impulse, I drove to Mike's auto, now closed for the day. Using the spare key Nathan had given me, I let myself in, needing to connect with him somehow. The garage was silent and dark, the tools neatly arranged, waiting for hands that would never use them again. I made my way to Nathan's workbench, running my fingers over the surface he'd touched countless times. His presence felt stronger here than at the cemetery. I opened his toolbox, not sure what I was looking for. Beneath the organized trays of sockets and wrenches, I found a small leather journal I'd never seen before. Opening it, I recognized Nathan's handwriting immediately. The journal entries began shortly after our move to Portland. August 15th, noticed a black sedan parked across from the garage today. Same car was near our apartment yesterday. Probably nothing, asterisk. August 30th, black sedan again. Got a partial plate this time, CT plates, starts with LDF asterisk. September 12th, someone went through my toolbox last night. Nothing missing, but definitely moved. Told Mike to check the security system asterisk. October 7th, Amanda's pregnancy showing now. So happy but also terrified. The sedan is back. Saw the driver this time, tall man, gray hair. Don't recognize him, but he doesn't belong here asterisk. October 28th, called an old buddy from home about the plate. He says it's registered to a shell company with ties to Lawrence Foster. God help us. Haven't told Amanda, stress bad for the baby. Need to think, asterisk. The entries continued, detailing Nathan's growing suspicion and fear. The final entry, dated the day of his murder, read simply, asterisk found a bug in my truck today. They're listening. Need to move Amanda somewhere safe tomorrow. Haven't figured out how to tell her asterisk. I clutched the journal to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Nathan had known. He'd been trying to protect me, to protect our baby, right until the end. And I'd had no idea. This journal wouldn't be enough for the police, it was circumstantial at best, paranoid ramblings at worst. But it was confirmation that I wasn't crazy, that my suspicions were justified. And it was the first piece of what would become my case against my family. I returned to our apartment with renewed purpose. I couldn't stay in Portland, surrounded by fresh grief and few resources. I needed to go where I could gather evidence, where I could watch my targets up close. I needed to go home. Not to my parents' house, never there again, but to a small extended-stay hotel near my hometown, where I could operate undetected while building my case. I spent the next day organizing Nathan's affairs, closing our apartment lease, and packing the essentials into my car. Before leaving Portland, I visited Nathan's grave one last time. "I will make them pay," I promised him, placing my hand on the fresh earth. "Not just for taking you from me, but for never seeing who you really were. I won't stop until justice is served." I drove south with Nathan's journal on the passenger seat beside me, a roadmap to the truth and my only companion for the journey ahead. The Oakwood extended stay in Fairfield, Connecticut became my base of operations. Just 20 minutes from my parents' estate, but anonymous enough that I could maintain my privacy. I paid in cash, using my maiden name and wearing dark sunglasses and a wig when checking in. Paranoid, perhaps, but I couldn't risk my family discovering my presence. My savings wouldn't last forever, but Nathan's life insurance provided enough to fund what I needed, primarily a private investigator. Finding one who wouldn't be connected to my father proved challenging, but eventually I located Ryan Delgado, a former Boston detective with a reputation for discretion and persistence. "I need evidence that my father hired someone to kill my husband," I told him bluntly during our first meeting in my hotel room. Delgado, a compact man with shrewd eyes and prematurely gray hair, didn't flinch at my directness. "That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Carter." "I know. And it's true." I showed him Nathan's journal, explained our history, and laid out everything I knew or suspected. When I finished, Delgado was silent for a long moment. "Most people who hire me to investigate family members are looking for evidence of affairs or hidden assets," he finally said. "This is different. Will you help me?" He studied me before answering. "Yes. But I need to be clear, if I find evidence of what you're suggesting, we go straight to the authorities. No vigilante justice. All I want is the truth," I assured him, though vengeance sang in my blood. Over the next 2 months, Delgado became my only ally and confidant. We developed a system for communicating securely, burner phones, encrypted emails, and regular meetings at changing locations. He taught me basic surveillance techniques and how to document everything meticulously. While Delgado investigated my father's business dealings and potential criminal connections, I focused on Stephanie and Heather. Years of friendship and sisterhood had given me intimate knowledge of their routines, weaknesses, and secrets. Stephanie's vanity made her predictable. Every Friday, she visited Bella's salon for a blowout, followed by drinks at the Savoy with colleagues. One evening, wearing my disguise, I positioned myself at a corner table, recording as Stephanie became increasingly intoxicated and loose-lipped with her friends. "God, it's so awkward with the Fosters now," she slurred after her third martini. "I mean, I've been friends with Amanda forever, but Lawrence and Victoria have always been so good to me. What was I supposed to do when they asked me to help, discourage the whole mechanic thing?" "What did they have you do?" one friend asked, leaning in eagerly. Stephanie giggled. "Nothing illegal. Just, mentioning to our friends that Nathan had gambling debts. And telling Amanda that people were asking why she wasn't at certain events when really, no one had invited her." She sighed dramatically. "I never thought it would end so badly. The poor guy." "At least she's coming home now, right?" another friend asked. "That's what Lawrence says. Once she's over the shock, they'll bring her back into the fold. Probably set her up with someone suitable this time." I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, forcing myself to remain seated instead of confronting her then and there. The recording wouldn't be admissible in court, but it confirmed Stephanie's involvement in the conspiracy against us. Heather proved more challenging. My sister had always been cautious, leaving minimal paper trails and keeping her true thoughts closely guarded. But she had one weakness, her husband Bradley's obvious affairs, which she pretended not to notice while drowning her sorrows in prescription medication. I staked out her favorite bar, a discreet establishment where Fairfield's elite went when they didn't want to be seen by their peers. After 3 nights of waiting, I spotted her alone at the bar, already unsteady on her stool despite the early hour. Disguised with a dark wig and glasses, I took the seat beside her and struck up a conversation about the difficulties of maintaining appearances. Heather, desperate for companionship in her misery, opened up to this stranger who seemed to understand the pressures of her world. My sister threw it all away, she confided after her second bourbon. Had everything, and chose nothing. And now she's alone. That's tragic, I sympathized. What happened to her? Heather's eyes grew unfocused. Married beneath her. A mechanic. She spat the word like a curse. Father tried to make her see reason. We all did. Even had her friend help isolate them. And that didn't work? Stubborn. Always so stubborn. Heather signaled for another drink. Then the accident. Terrible thing. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. But Father says it's for the best. She'll come home now. Where she belongs. The accident? I prompted. Something in my tone must have alerted her, because Heather suddenly straightened, eyes narrowing as she studied my face. Who are you? I left quickly, heart pounding, but I had what I needed, confirmation that my sister knew Nathan's death was no accident. Delgado's investigation yielded more concrete results. Using contacts in the banking industry, he uncovered a series of transactions from one of my father's offshore accounts to a shell company known to be associated with Viktor Kozlov, a former Russian military officer with suspected ties to contract killings. 3 payments, Delgado explained, spreading the documents across my hotel bed. $50,000 2 months before your husband's death, another $50,000 1 week before, and $100,000 the day after. That's it, I breathed, staring at the paper trail. That's our proof. It's circumstantial, Delgado cautioned. Foster could claim these were legitimate business transactions. Then we need more, I insisted. Our breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Nathan's journal had mentioned that my father feared he had discovered evidence of tax fraud. On a hunch, I asked Delgado to investigate my father's business dealings with Anderson's Auto, Nathan's former employer in Connecticut. There it is, Delgado said 2 weeks later, pointing to a spreadsheet. Foster Investments owns the property where Anderson's is located. For the past 5 years, they've been using the garage to launder money, inflating repair costs, billing for phantom services, cycling cash through the business. Nathan, as head mechanic, would have seen the discrepancies between actual repairs and what was being billed. That's why they had to kill him, I realized. Not just because of me, but because he could expose their operation. With this new direction, I took a calculated risk. Using skills Delgado had taught me, I created a simple but effective keylogger and installed it on Heather's laptop during a charity event she chaired. Within days, I had access to her emails, including exchanges with my father discussing Nathan's unfortunate accident and the need to secure Amanda's return. Most damning was an email from my father to a contact identified only as V with the subject line "Portland job complete" and a message reading simply, "Final payment transferred." All loose ends addressed. No connection to us possible. This is it, I told Delgado, forwarding him the emails. This is what we need. It's enough for the FBI, he agreed. This goes beyond murder for hire, we've got evidence of money laundering, tax fraud, and conspiracy. The Boston field office has agents who specialize in financial crimes. I have contacts there. That night, I made my final preparations. I downloaded all the evidence we'd gathered, financial records, emails, recorded conversations, Nathan's journal, and organized it meticulously. Then I called my parents for the first time since Nathan's funeral. Amanda, my mother answered, surprise evident in her voice. Are you all right? We've been so worried. I'm ready to come home, I said, forcing a tremor into my voice. You were right about everything. I should have listened. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Then my father came on the line. That's wonderful news, sweetheart. Why don't you join us for dinner tomorrow night? Just the family, you, me, your mother, and Heather. We have so much to discuss about your future. I'd like that, I replied. There's so much I need to say to all of you. 7 o'clock, he confirmed. Come home, Amanda. Everything will be better now. As I hung up, I felt a chill run down my spine. In my father's mind, Nathan's murder had achieved exactly what he wanted, my capitulation, my return to the fold. He believed he had won. Tomorrow night, he would discover just how wrong he was. I arrived at the Foster estate at precisely 6:55 p.m., heart hammering against my ribs but expression carefully composed. Maria greeted me with a warm hug, her eyes sympathetic. It's good to have you home, Miss Amanda. If only she knew this wasn't a homecoming but a final goodbye. My mother waited in the foyer, arms outstretched. Amanda, darling. You look thin. Her embrace felt hollow, a performance of maternal concern without substance. Grief does that, I replied, my voice flat. My father emerged from his study, Heather trailing behind him. The sight of him, confident, untroubled, no hint of guilt in his expression, made bile rise in my throat. This man had ordered my husband's execution and felt nothing. There's my girl, he said, as if I were returning from college for a weekend visit rather than mourning my murdered husband. Let's have a drink before dinner. In the living room, crystal glasses of Macallan 25 were distributed. Stephanie arrived moments later, breezing in with air kisses and a relieved, "Thank God you've come to your senses, Amanda." I sipped my scotch slowly, observing them all, these people who had destroyed my life and now expected me to thank them for it. My mother, adjusting flower arrangements with nervous precision. My father, comfortable in his armchair like a king on his throne. Heather, watching me warily from the window seat. Stephanie, chattering about a shopping trip we simply must take together. I want to thank you all for your patience, I began, setting down my glass. These past months have been clarifying. Of course, dear, my mother soothed. Grief can be so disorienting. Not grief, I corrected. Discovery. I've learned so much about all of you. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. My father leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean that I know everything. I kept my voice calm, conversational. I know about the sabotage of Nathan's career. The lies to our neighbors and friends. The laundering operation at Anderson's. Stephanie laughed nervously. Amanda, what are you talking about? I'm talking about conspiracy, Steph. I know you warned people away from us, spread rumors about gambling debts that didn't exist. Her face paled. That's not, I was just following orders? I supplied. Being a good little soldier in the Foster Army? My father set his glass down with controlled precision. Amanda, you're clearly still traumatized. Why don't we table this discussion until you're more balanced? I'm perfectly balanced, father. Just focused. I know you had Nathan killed because he discovered your tax fraud scheme. The room went deadly silent. Heather's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. That's absurd, my father finally said, but his face had hardened into a mask. You're making wild accusations based on grief and paranoia. I reached into my purse and removed a folder. No, I'm making accusations based on evidence. Financial transfers to Viktor Kozlov. Emails discussing the Portland job. Nathan's journal documenting surveillance before his murder. My mother gasped. My father's expression didn't change, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. Amanda, he said slowly, you're my daughter, and I love you. Whatever mistakes you've made, we can work through them. But this? He gestured at the folder. This is dangerous territory. Are you threatening me now, too? He sighed, shifting tactics. How much? Excuse me? How much do you want? To destroy that so-called evidence and put this unfortunate episode behind us? 5 million? 10? Name your price. I laughed, the sound harsh and unfamiliar even to my own ears. You think this is about money? You had my husband killed. I lost our baby from the stress. There isn't enough money in the world. Then what do you want? He demanded, mask slipping to reveal the cold calculation beneath. Justice. I stood, moving toward the large mirror on the far wall. And as it happens, we have witnesses. I removed the decorative frame, revealing the two-way glass behind it, a renovation my father had commissioned years ago to monitor business meetings held in the adjacent room. Behind the glass stood Detective Morgan, Delgado, and 2 FBI agents, recording devices in hand. As if on cue, the front door burst open, and agents swarmed in, bulletproof vests emblazoned with FBI in yellow letters. Lawrence Foster, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and tax fraud, announced the lead agent, a stern-faced woman who looked utterly unmoved by the opulence surrounding her. My father lunged toward me, but was quickly restrained. As agents recited his rights, he snarled, "You ungrateful bitch. After everything we've done for you. You've done nothing but destroy what I loved," I replied calmly. Nathan was worth 100 of you. Stephanie and Heather were handcuffed next, charged as accessories. My mother, initially overlooked, was arrested when agents discovered her signature on key financial documents relating to the money laundering operation. You'll regret this, Heather hissed as she was led past me. You're nothing without the Foster name. I'm everything without it, I corrected. I'm Nathan's widow. And that means more than being Lawrence Foster's daughter ever did. I watched from the driveway as my family and former best friend were placed in separate vehicles. Detective Morgan approached, offering a rare smile. Without your work, we wouldn't have had enough for these arrests, he said. Your husband would be proud. I nodded, throat tight with emotion. What happens now? Now they face justice. The FBI has enough evidence for federal charges. With the murder for hire, your father is looking at life without parole. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom watching my father receive exactly that sentence. His expensive lawyers had failed to overcome the mountain of evidence I'd gathered. My mother, pleading ignorance, received 15 years. Heather and Stephanie, 8 years each for their roles in the conspiracy. When it was over, I visited Nathan's grave, now moved to a peaceful cemetery near my new home in Seattle. It's done, I told him, placing white lilies beside his headstone. They can't hurt anyone else now. 2 weeks after the sentencing, I received unexpected news from my doctor. Despite the trauma of losing our first child, I was pregnant again, conceived during our last night together. A miracle that Nathan had left behind. Today, I sit beside my son's crib, watching him sleep. Nathan James Carter Jr. has his father's eyes and gentle spirit. We live modestly but comfortably on the insurance money and my teaching salary. Nathan's parents have become my family, visiting often to dote on their grandson. I've started a foundation using my portion of the foster assets seized by the government, helping people escape toxic family situations and rebuild their lives. It won't bring Nathan back, but it gives purpose to my pain and meaning to his memory. The Foster name no longer defines me. I am Amanda Carter, Nathan's widow, little Nathan's mother, and my own person. In losing everything I thought mattered, I discovered what truly does: love, truth, and the courage to fight for both, no matter the cost. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the family we choose is more precious than the one we're born into. Thank you for listening, and remember, no matter how dark things seem, justice and healing are always possible.